Hey you, come, gather around the campfire, and welcome to the party. This is Party Chat, a JRPG podcast where we talk about everything that we love in the world of JRPGs and other Eastern titles. I'm your host, Cameron Hawkins. Along, as always, is my party partner, Kevin Kenson. Kevin, how you doing?
Doing all right today. I'm having one of those. I'm not sick, but I feel like I'm getting sick, and I hate it. Like, I just kind of want to know if I'm going to be sick or not. Like, can we just get this over with? I don't like, I'm like a little head foggy today, a little lower energy. I'm not a fan. But otherwise, I can't complain. How about you? How are you doing today, Cam?
Uh, I'm doing the best I can. But I have I have to make an official apology on this podcast before we get into the thick of
Oh
things.
no, who did we anger?
So, so, so yesterday, not yesterday, last week on last week's episode, uh, Kevin was mentioning like, "Oh, it's your birthday this week," and I'm like, "Yeah, it is," and it's coming out like the episode's coming out publicly like the day of your birthday. So happy birthday! I'm like, "Cool, dope." And then, and we record on Tuesday, so this was March 4th. On March 5th, I'm scrolling through Twitter. I'm scrolling through Twitter, and I see Kevin's wife Christine making a post being like, "Oh, going out for going out for dinner for hubby's birthday," and I'm like, "No fucking way, no fucking way." And here's the thing: I'm pretty sure we talked about this like maybe less than a month ago. I'm pretty sure like less than a month ago we talked about how your birthday is the day before mine, and that just somehow completely went into the dumpster bin of my brain. Like absolutely no remembrance of that date at all. And so I was just like, I
Yeah,
call Kevin
which
on
I
the
I, I want to
phone.
highlight right away. That call made it 100% worth it. Just the frantic sound of your like I'm just driving. I wasn't even thinking about it. Like totally wasn't on my mind. I'm driving. We're heading coming back from a cafe we went to during the day. I'm like, oh, Camp's calling me. So I just put you on speakerphone while we're driving, and you're just immediately like, "Is don't tell me it's your birthday right now. Don't tell me I forgot." Like the immediate, you're like, I'm such a terrible person. Oh my god, you wish me a happy, like just the the panic in your voice.
Yeah, so I feel like such a complete fucking asshole because I completely forgot. I had no idea. And so now this is the Kevin birthday episode, you know. So next year we'll have like party hats for both of us.
We will
You know,
remember. We won't
we will
remember.
remember. And then we will, yeah, we probably won't. But this is the Kevin birthday episode. Happy birthday, Kevin. Uh, we love you. I love you. And yeah, so that that is my apology. And but first, before we get into the news, we're gonna get into housekeeping for the week. If you've been enjoying the show, please give us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform of choice you listen to the podcast. And also, don't forget to go to YouTube, to our YouTube channel, to give us a subscription. It helps a lot. It helps with getting more exposure. And also, if you want to support us financially, you can go to our Patreon, Party Chat JRPG Podcast, where we um, where we you can tier, you can subscribe, and there's a bunch of tiers where you can where you can get a bunch of rewards. Notably, you get the episode a day early. You get access to exclusive Discord. You get our monthly Q&A, our Campfire catalog, which is our like book club podcast. We're doing it on Chrono Trigger, and that episode is coming out this month finally. Um, I know that's kind of for those that are longtime listeners, like, dang, they're still doing Chrono Trigger, right? And it's just one of those things where, like, there's only two of us, and it takes a lot of time to play a JRPG. So I just would rather underestimate than overestimate ourselves.
Oh yeah, especially the way this year started with so much stuff. Like I think we might be able to adjust the schedule in the future, but for now, it's like we need that breathing room.
Yeah, exactly. I'm still just like right now. I'm just like I don't know when I'm gonna be able to play Chrono Trigger and finish this game. But I gotta find the time to do it.
I believe
Um,
in you.
and then also go to youtube.com/Kevin Kenson and go give Kevin a birthday gift. As a birthday gift, go over and sub as he tries to get to 1 million subs before the end of this year. But now we are going to get into the news for the week, which pretty big news week. Pretty big news week.
Quite a few things.
The first thing that's worth noting is that Square Enix has announced that there are going to be new Chrono Trigger projects in the work. They didn't say it's a video game related, but they said that there are new projects coming.
Yeah. It's a very broad. I think the wording was something like beyond the world of Chrono Trigger, which is like it feels like them kind of safely trying to be like, we're not talking remakes right now, but you know, we're gonna do stuff.
Yeah.
There's stuff happening.
Yeah, so yesterday, as of recording, March 10th was the 30-year anniversary of Chrono Trigger. And so Square went to Twitter and they shared a tweet saying, quote, "Today marks the 30th anniversary of the release of Chrono Trigger in 1995. This timeless masterpiece that transcends generations and is still talked about today was born from a dream project by Yuji Horii of Dragon Quest, Akira Toriyama of Dragon Ball, and Horinobu Sakaguchi, the creator of Final Fantasy. As we mark the 30th anniversary, we'll be launching various projects that go beyond the world of the game over the next year to express our gratitude to everyone who has played Chrono Trigger so far," end quote. They also shared that there's going to be a Chrono Trigger music special live stream March 14th at 4 a.m. Pacific time on YouTube. So you can watch it later if you don't watch it live. Kevin, you're the Chrono Trigger guy, so what are your thoughts? What are your speculations?
I want to control those because, like, look, it as a fan of that, like, there's plenty of people that can attest to this. Like, this is one of those games where there's that question of like, why haven't they tried doing something yet? Like, we got a sequel years back with Chrono Cross, and then the last big remake we had was DS, which then we got like the Steam port that changed things a little bit, and then it's kind of been nothing since.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a while for what is considered by many people to be like the best JRPG ever made. Like, that's just like, it has that reputation, whether people individually agree with it or not. It has that. It's like one of those must play kind of games.
Yeah,
and so it like raises that question of like, so like, what are we actually getting? Like, what's actually happening right now? Because projects is such a broad term, right? Like, could be game tie-ins. That could be certainly something that people would love to see, but they might be talking, I don't know, are we getting like a manga adaptation? Is there going to be some kind of special short that is going to air? Like, just like project is such a broad term, right? And we know one of the things is that concert. I would love it to just be like all of the things. Like, yes, please, like, make things, like, release. Like, there has to have been stuff. Like, someone has had to have talked about it in the office of like, we should do something with this property. It's just been sitting right now. And we did get, I mean, there was the remaster of Chrono Cross, but then that also raised the questions of like, well, where's Trigger?
Yeah, like, I don't know. I know that Chrono Cross is like loosely connected to Chrono Trigger. And I don't know. I think that Square just doesn't want to potentially taint that game in any way, even though they have released like bad ports of that game and like, could have definitely did better about that, but I don't think that denies the greatness of that game in any way.
Certainly.
And so I just think that, and it was just such kind of like the perfect people in the perfect moment in time type thing that like that's like hardly may ever be recreated, like with a bunch of different creative minds at their prime. You know what I mean? Like,
I mean, it's lightning in a bottle. I mean, those three names they 100%. Just dropped, right? Like, especially at that time where it's like, oh, the guy in charge of Dragon Quest, the biggest RPG franchise in Japan, plus the creator of Final Fantasy, the other very big Japanese, which those weren't the same company at the time either. Square Enix were still separate at the time. So the fact that like they had them come on and work with that, plus art direction from Toriyama, ridiculous. I mean, so much about that game went right, and not even the we're getting into what should probably be Campfire catalog talk, but like not even the established talent on there, like the debut of Mitsuda. That was his first big soundtrack. Dude was 21, and he made like one of the best video game soundtracks of all time. Like he worked himself to the bone doing it. But yeah, just like the talent and ideas that went into that game, ridiculous. And that's like I understand the idea of like maybe they don't want to touch it because like don't don't mess it up, don't taint, because like they have in some of their past works with it, made choices that people were kind of like and obviously the reaction to Chrono Cross, um, yeah, like I understand there's like that fear, but at the same time it's like maybe just try one more time. I don't know, just I love it so much.
Yeah, it's one of those things where for me, like as someone who has not finished the game, like I I want to like plead the fifth until I finish it, of
For
course.
sure.
But yeah, that would be like my best guess is just like, hey, like what can we do as a game that isn't a remake, particularly like a HD2D remake or whatever,
Sure.
where like it that we like don't fuck this up. And so but I mean, even like just doing the simple way of just like porting that shit to Switch would sell so much money.
Yeah. I,
That
I
like, and maybe they're like doing a rainy day fund, right? Where they're just like waiting for when they're in hot water, and they're like, "Oh, okay, we're going to release this on Switch now," and
yeah,
then you do it that way. But
yeah, the fact that the only current system supported version is PC with Steam is wild to me. Like it seemed like it'd be such an easy idea to just like throw that on modern consoles. Like why not? Like it's not in any of the
hmm
classic libraries. It's not a part of a collection. It is just not available outside of PC right now, unless you want to track down some very expensive physical copies.
yeah,
Um, yeah, which is also like just to go to one of your points too. That's also why I brought up the idea of things like manga adaptations or shorts, like something where it's like, don't mess with the formula. Like you already have the story and the things here, so what if you just translate that into another form? Which is absolutely something that happens during celebrations. I mean, we even saw Konami announce that with Suikoden, where we're getting a anime adaptation of two. So
yeah,
who
exactly.
knows? Hopefully, us soon.
Next story: Death Stranding 2 on the Beach is launching on June 26th. Kojima had a panel at South by Southwest where they released a new 10-minute long trailer, um, and had the release date at the end, which way earlier than I thought it would be.
Yeah,
Like I thought this was a September October game at the earliest.
yeah, with the
And
potential of being pushed back. Like honestly,
yeah,
like it's just one of those
yeah,
games you just don't know until it's here.
yeah, exactly. And so I'm just like I'm really happy that it's coming out soon because like I love Death Stranding. I think I'm one of the like people that were just from go higher on that game than a lot of other people. Because there's just something so like cathartic and satisfying of like delivering the packages. It's releases that dopamine that like even though I haven't finished the game, but now I'm just like, damn, I need to finish this game in like 3 months, and I don't have the time for that. That is a big game, and I don't have the time for it. And so now I'm just like, what do I do? Um, but yeah, so they released a new trailer. Pre-orders are going up on March 17th. The general pre-orders of the game give an early unlock of uh, custom hologram Quokka, as well as Battle Skeleton Silver level 123, Boost Skeleton Silver 123, and Boca Skeleton Silver 123. There is a digital deluxe edition priced at $79.99 that includes 2-day early access beginning on June 24th, and more in-game items, which are basically the gold versions of all of the things I previously said. And then an early unlock of the machine gun level 1, and then 3 in-game patches for I think your suit, I'm gonna assume. And then the collector's edition is priced at $229.99, and it includes the collector's box, a digital download of the game, so no physical copy of the game, sadly, a set of art cards, a letter from Hideo Kojima, a 3-inch Dollman figure, that's pretty cool. That's like for those that know, it's like the doll that is animated in a different frame rate than everything else.
Yeah,
It looks really cool. And a 15-inch McGallan Man statue, along with all the other previous pre-order bonuses. No steelbook, which is interesting because the first game did have a steelbook. Um, so that makes me sad. How you feeling about this?
I mean, it's uh, look, how can I put this? That
Did you
trailer
like the?
was everything I would expect from Kojima. You know what I
hmm
mean? Like it's
hmm
just like that. That was a Kojima trailer. The
hmm
pacing of it, a lot of I was talking to you when I was watching it, and I love how usually when a trailer is longer, it's because they're over explaining things, like you're getting too much of the plot, and that is still kind of true here, but none of it makes any more sense, really. Like there was one thing they showed that I wish they didn't, like the very last thing. I was like that would have been a cool like WTF in game. Like I wish that wasn't shown. But everything else up till that moment was just like I don't know what any like I kind of know what a lot of this means, coming from the first game, but I I'm excited to figure some of it out later. um, Death Stranding is interesting to me because I love Kojima's older works, and I liked the first one. I did not get as into it as I was into like Metal Gear Solid. Um, but I'm also just like here for when he makes things. Like I'm good to check it out. I'm going to see
Hmm.
for myself, and I'm very curious. Like we've seen so many bits and pieces, and not like long extended gameplay. I'm very curious how this one's going to be paced compared to the first, because the first had
That
those
makes
like
sense.
occasional dense action moments and then a whole lot of walking and transporting.
Hmm.
And the trailers are
I
really
love it.
hyping up some of the more action. I will say the one thing the trailers did show though that I'm really excited about, um, environmental variety. Like the first game was like you're in New Zealand kind of, or whatever. It has that very kind of fail style rock and agriculture everywhere. And this trailer was like, no, there's California style desert and mountains, and then there's forests, and there's like it looked way more varied, which I did appreciate.
Mm. Yeah, like so, even though I love Death Stranding, there are definitely issues that I have with it. I think it is shocking to me how like people say that like, oh, Metal Gear Solid 5 is one of the best feeling games, like playing wise,
Hmm.
like ever made. And like he's known for making all these like great stealth games, and the stealth is garbage in Death Stranding. Like absolutely
Ha-
terrible.
have you played Director's Cut or just the original? Because I think Director's Cut did make some updates in that regard.
I really hope I really hope that's not true because I'm playing the PS4 version because again, I'm not this type of guy, but I like Death Stranding enough where I want to get the platinum for that game. And the thing is that the platinum lists are not the same
Mm.
between the PS4 and the director's cut. So, I have to play the PS4 game to get the platinum and then transfer my save over and then clear up what's left. And so that is kind of where I'm at, where it's just like that kind of sucks that I have to play through most of my time on the PS4 version because there are other like small things that are just like why does this happen every time? Like when the fucking thing detects the creatures and it's just
Yeah.
like they have to stop everything and just see this thing creep out of his I'm like I don't need to see this every fucking time it happens because it happens frequently. So it's
Yeah,
like
it
why?
interrupts the
Why
flow a lot. Yeah.
100%. And so that is really annoying. Um, and again, the stealth is bad, and there's other things, but dude, just like picking up those packages, delivering them, walking through like the show, like using the trigger buttons to like balance yourself, like oh it just feels so good, and I love it. So I'm super excited for Death Stranding 2, and like again, I have like I made like a list of games in the Discord. I'm like, oh, I need to finish this, and then I can get to Death Stranding.
Which is also
But
not. I like to note that that Discord list did not include actively
new
releasing titles.
releases, yeah,
Like
nope,
Xenoblade
nope,
Chronicles X wasn't on there.
nope.
Yeah, there's a lot of things coming out still. I made a list. I think June specifically is kind of dead outside of
But
like
SGF is happening.
yeah, true. And so there could be some last second announce like oh by the way this is dropping in a week or something. But
Also, we're just gonna be busy. It's just gonna be a lot of stuff going on. So
yeah,
that's just like, oh, that's annoying too. It's kind of like when Last of Us came out in June. When it on the back on the PS3, it was like right after E3 was when
yeah.
The Last of Us came out.
It was literally like the next day. I remember that because they were like, "Oh, do you want to like see a demo of it?" I'm like, "It releases tomorrow. Like, I'm gonna go pick it up like after this."
Yeah. Uh, but yeah. So I'm excited about Death Stranding too, and I'm excited to get back to. I'm just glad. Like I'm one of those people that when a new game comes out for a series I want to play, I'm like, okay, now I have a real reason that I need to get this done. Because
Yeah.
then, because I just like, oh, I want to play this, I want to play that, and I'm like, now I'm like, oh, I'm gonna play this because that's how I was with like Ratchet and Clank, Rift Apart. I'm like, I've never played any of the Ratchet and Clank games. I'm gonna do a series playthrough. Paper Mario: The Origami King. I've never played a Paper Mario game. I'm gonna play through all the Paper Mario games. And this is no different. But none of the the collector's edition, not for you, not for you on this one.
Oh, I'm pretty picky with collector's editions these days. I
Mm,
I had a time where I was like picking them up more often, and it just hit a point where I was like, what am I even doing with like most of this stuff? Especially when there
mhm,
was that era where like everything came with like 20 items and you really only cared about like 3 of them. They'd be like, oh, and
mm.
then you get like these pieces of paper, and then this thing, and then there's these little things, and I'm just like, I can't keep up with all of this. So nowadays, like collector's editions, it has to be like something weird, which this one does tickle a little bit with the little guy, but not enough, I think, for me.
Yeah, the little guy is like the biggest thing for me. And that's just like not not paying $230 for that. But like, because I didn't play Death Stranding until after, like shortly after it released. And then when I realized, oh, I really like this, they still had like the collector's edition available, and it was on sale. Like I got it for like less than $100. And so I just like, because comes with the bridge baby. I'm like, oh,
Hell yeah,
I need that bridge baby. I need that bridge baby.
that's a good
So
pickup. Solid.
yeah, very glad I got it. Um, Next story. Gung Ho has released a new trailer for Trails in the Sky First Chapter, and we got the voice casting list for the main crew, for the liberal crew. And For the English side, it is what is expected. I'm not gonna jump into the Japan side of stuff. Like I'm not super knowledgeable about that, but for those that do care about the Japanese voiceover, apparently everyone except for the voices for Olivier and Jin have been recast, and everyone's like super like upset about it.
Interesting.
Yeah. Apparently, we don't have an exact answer. Um, there's someone I don't remember their name, unfortunately, but they have kind of been like a Falcom insider of sorts, and they said that apparently this decision was Falcom. Like Falcom said, like it was just a necessary thing that they needed to do.
Hmm.
I don't know if it was because like at this point those actors uh sound too old
Sure.
or something like that to
Yeah.
voice those characters.
Well, and that was also my kind of follow-up question, is that some of these characters like still come up, right? Like in the later games. So
Oh yeah.
have they been that voice actor this whole time until suddenly this remake?
Yes. It seems
Interesting.
that is the case.
Interesting.
Um and then for the English voice cast, again, we got everyone that uh has been the voice of recent years. So Stephanie Shea is voicing Estelle. She's always voiced Estelle, even like in the PSP version. Uh John Young Bosch is voicing Joshua. Same. Michelle Ruff is voicing Sherazard. Same. Olivier's being voiced by Matt Mercer. Uh, since the Cold Steel games, he has been the voice of Olivier. It was originally Troy Baker,
Hmm.
but that was only in the PSP version. And the PSP version is not like really dialogue. It's more like
Call outs. Yeah.
grunts, no call outs, like things
Yeah.
like that.
I'm
And
using
so,
this move, and like that's
yeah, exactly. And so not a huge deal, but yeah. And then Chloe is voiced by Christina V, which she's always voiced. Um, Agate. Sorry, I was just thinking about the for those listening. I'm not gonna go too far on a tangent, but I've gotten some friends into the Trail
Oh
series.
wait, is this how to pronounce his name? Because I've heard this. It's either
Yeah,
Agate or
dude.
Agate. Is some people have said Agate
Yeah,
apparently.
yeah. And so like,
I will say my reflex is Agate, which is what you said. So I'm guessing
yes,
that's correct.
it's a like agate the rock, like the type of rock. And so, but yeah, someone said like, oh, it's agate. I'm like, excuse me? That is not a name. Like, what do you mean? And so yeah, I've gotten a few friends into the Trail series, to those listening. And for some reason, like, all of them have thought that Agate's name is Agate. And like, it was so funny because this is a quick small story. I was doing a panel for NIS America for PAX West, and I had some of the people that basically like reached out to me, who I've been working with from NIS, to come to a karaoke night. And one of the people was Kondo's translator, the guy who translates for Kondo whenever Kondo's in the US.
Yeah.
And he also like works with the localization team and stuff. And one of my friends, Jared Lugo, Jared, I'm so sorry for calling you out if you're listening to this. He was playing Trails in the Sky, the first game at the time. And I bring him over to Jared. I'm like, tell this man that Agate's name is Agate and not Agate. And the way this man looked at him, like, bro, what do you mean Agate? um, and yeah, that was just a really. Every time I think of Agate now, I am reminded of that incredible story, and I thank Jared Lugo for that. But yeah, so Agate Krosner is being voiced by Ben Pronsky, which is interesting because this is honestly the most weird one to me, because even though Ben voiced him in the Cold Steel games when he shows up in the Cold Steel games, the original voice was Brian Pappenbrook. And the reason why that's weird is because he is the voice of Adel in Ys.
Huh. So he
So
is around. Like,
yeah, he's already doing Falcom stuff. Like, why couldn't he be the voice? Is it just because he's too expensive? Like that could totally be it, right? Like Troy Baker, right? Like, y'all ain't getting Troy Baker to voice Olivier in 2025. Like, this is not going to happen for a small game like this. But and Pappenbrook is a huge voice actor. I am not in any way denying that. But also, like, if you're voicing him in like, he's a voice in East, why can't he be a voice of Agate in Trails? Like, I don't know.
yeah.
Ben is great, and and I'm not trying to like say like, oh, like one is better than the other. I just like am confused by that. Tita is being voiced by Brianna Knickerbocker, who has voiced her in the Cold Steel games as well, and she's great. The original voice was Julie Madalena in the PSP version. And then Jin is being voiced again by Vic Chow, and because Jin is in the Daybreak games. But Patrick Seitz used to be the voice of him, and so like that was a recast when Daybreak came out as well. So a few recasts, but like in the sense of recent history, everyone's basically the same. And I'm just honestly like, because like, yeah, Matt Mercer's incredible as Olivier. Olivier is my favorite character. I'm just glad that Stephanie and Johnny are back. Like the rest, like, I would get over, like, but I'm glad that Stephanie and Johnny are back as Estelle and Joshua. Even though, again, not a whole lot of dialogue in the originals, but like in Cold Steel, like when they come back, and like Reverie, they're fantastic. I'm glad they're back. And you're just nodding because like I ain't got anything to say about it because
I got no input. I have played roughly 2 hours of first chapter, so I need to do more of that. Yeah, I'm deferring to you as the authority on this, especially on this podcast. That sounds great. I'm happy.
Hell yeah. Next story. New Dino Crisis trademark in Japan.
Yeah. This is interesting because
what does this mean?
I mean, it can mean a lot of things, right? Because like I think we talked about this before with I can't remember what game it was right now, but like trademarks get renewed all the time, and it's not always necessarily a game.
Skies of Arcadia.
That's what it was. It was Skies of Arcadia. Yeah.
Yeah.
Guy, I wish it would mean that. It can mean a lot of things though. Like they want to use the IP in some way. They want to hold on to it. There could be some kind of, you know, tie-in media or referencing it in some way. Uh, it does exist on like current platforms, kind of. The PlayStation, whatever it's called, PlayStation Plus Premium, the where you can
Yeah.
play the classic games. You can play Dino
Hmm.
Crisis there. But Capcom has openly stated they want to start bringing back more franchises. Like that's a
Yes. That.
thing they have said. So
Yes.
uh, them renewing an IP like that or a trademark like that might mean something when paired with that other context, you know?
Yeah. I that was like the main thing. It's just like, yeah, it's a trademark renewal, but Capcom did say that they want to bring back old IP, and people have particularly been clamoring for Dino Crisis. I've never played Dino Crisis, so doesn't really particularly do anything for me, but
Sure.
it is something that's like worth noting, and it's just like,
Well,
okay.
and honestly, like it makes sense clamoring for a new one in the sense that like Dino Crisis is this isn't like a one-to-one comparison, but it's basically Resident Evil with dinosaurs. Like that's kind of
Mm,
what it is. Like it's not
mm,
like a massively different genre. It's survival horror shooter, but instead of zombies, you got velociraptors or whatever. Um,
interesting.
so like with Resident Evil doing as well as it has been, and you know having the success it's had with the shift over to like the third person over the shoulder, also having the first person view ones with the Ethan games. I think there's that kind of idea of like, okay, you're doing that well, so like, what if that, but dinosaurs? You take that and you put dinosaurs. You know,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think that's a large part of why people like want to see it because we know something similar is doing so well right now.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair. And also people just like dinos, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And then the last thing, which is just kind of a quick thing, is worth noting. Like we're not gonna break the news on this all the time, but pretty notable games that just came to Nintendo Switch Online. We got the Donkey Kong. I think it's 94 Donkey Kong.
It's the
Um,
Game Boy one, right? Yeah.
yeah, so Donkey Kong 9, yeah, DK94, and then Mario's Picross.
Yeah. I
So
The Donkey Kong one's interesting to me because this is actually something I talked about a ways back where uh I'd be curious if Nintendo has any interest of adding the ability to turn on Super Game Boy versions of games. Because that's actually the thing about that Donkey Kong game. I believe it's that one, where it actually has like a Super Game Boy specific modes and style that a lot of people really love. Like I've talked to people who are like, oh, that's like, yeah, the Game Boy, like it's good, but the moment you put it into a Super Game Boy, like that is top tier Donkey Kong right there.
huh,
And so I'd
interesting.
be curious if there's any interest in like opening that up in some way down the line. But I don't think they've mentioned that yet.
Yeah, no, I don't know anything about that, so but I hope that is a thing that happens for to make other
More
people
cool
happy.
things.
Yeah.
What one random piece of news I want to add on real quick. We did also get a new trailer for Devil May Cry, the animated series, and it looks
Mhm.
great. They're really leaning into the late '90s, early 2000s rock scene, which I'm not as big of a
Yes.
fan of, but it fits. Like it makes sense
Really?
here.
Really?
I'm not well, at least of the artists they're working with. I never really cared for like Limp Bizkit or what is it, Papa Roach in the newest trailer.
Yeah,
Not
but I feel
not my
like that they're
scene.
no like I'm not super big into them either, but those are like, oh, those are notable songs. Like those are songs I'm just like,
Oh,
oh, like that
yeah.
I
No,
get
don't get
that.
me wrong.
Like
Like, yeah, I understand they're big. I just don't care for them.
that's
Like,
fair, that's fair.
yeah.
I
But
get what you're
trailer
saying.
looks really
I like
good.
yeah.
I will say, based on what we're seeing from it, it looks like they're going the route of like we kind of knew this already, but based on what we're seeing, it looks very much like it's going to be like an adaptation of three, but like with heavier changes based on stuff we're seeing. But
Mm.
it's definitely using three as a template.
Yeah, see, I've only played DMC 5. And well, I played the Ninja Theory DMC, which gets a lot of hate and I don't understand it. I really like it. I know it's not like what people want from a traditional DMC game, but
Yeah,
like I still thought it was a good action game with cool mechanics and like I had a really good time with it.
yeah.
Um but yeah, I've only played those two and I just haven't taken the time to go back and play any of the others because I've heard like, you know, oh, one's good, two's fine, three's good, like four's fine.
Yeah,
Seems
generally,
like every
like
odd game.
yeah, like three is usually considered like the best one. like
Mhm.
5 competes with it a bit now. Like there is a segment of people who are like, oh no, 5 is like that's the one. But until 5 happened, 3 was always like that's peak DMC. And like
Yeah.
1 was
And
good. 1 was like a great breakout. 2 not so much. That's usually the one people put at the bottom. 4 is a little divisive. I feel like some people rank it a little higher than others. But yeah, usually 3 and 5 are like the top for people.
yeah, and if 5 is the top, like for a majority of people, like I liked 5. I wasn't crazy about it. Like I thought I was like this is a fun game. Like I enjoyed my time with it. Like it was definitely the first game where I was just like, "Oh, there's like they made a character that has like more tools and resources than Sora." Like which I, you know, before then I was just because I remember having conversations with people when the DMC5 came out and they're like, "Yeah, Dante's probably like the most like has like the biggest arsenal of things to use as a character ever." And I was just like, but Sora from Kingdom Hearts, like but Sora. And they're
Yeah.
like, "No, yeah, I said what I said." And then I played DMC5 and I'm like, "Oh, yeah, you're absolutely
And
right." Cuz
five's not
like,
even his biggest loadout. Like
really?
yeah, 3 he has 5 different melee weapons and 5 different ranged guns. Uh, and there's
Cuz
also
like,
like
yeah.
style stuff inside them. Yeah, it's a lot. It's good stuff.
Yeah, it's a lot. So yeah, especially like the hat, the hat that just dances,
Yeah.
and then I think it's like you gain orbs as long as you don't get hit, but then if you get hit, you lose a shit ton, like something like that. Like that's cool, that's funny. But yeah, so we're gonna go on the topic of the show
No,
for
what we've been
this.
playing this week?
Oh yeah, yeah. What you been playing this week, Kevin?
Uh, stuff. I spent way too much time playing games last week, to be honest. So
Okay.
I did start and finish our. I didn't start last week, but I started a little ways back and finished up Chrono Trigger DS for our
Mm.
upcoming Campfire catalog.
How
So
long did it take you to? I mean, you know the ins and outs of this game, so I expect it to be a little bit longer for me. But how long did it take you to beat that game?
so it took me just over 20 hours, but also keep in mind that the DS one has
Extra content,
extra
right?
content that is honestly like brain-numbingly more stuff to do. Like not like in a fun way. Like one of the side quests they add is just a lot of like you have to go back and forth through these areas a lot of times to do these quests.
Hmm.
It's not my favorite thing, but I wanted to get through it for the sake of like having that part fresh in my brain.
Conversation.
And
Yeah.
that honestly added like 3 to 4 hours. Like that thing
Okay.
alone. Um,
That's all I was curious about.
yeah.
What else have you been playing?
Aside from that, I also did start up the Suikoden 1 and 2 collection. Um,
Nice.
I may have unhealthily like just burned my way through 1. Uh, it was a good time. One's short. Like one's like I think the
I've heard
original.
one is short.
Yeah, 1 is short because like if you do like a brand new playthrough, no guide, and you're just like trying to get through it, the original game is probably about 20 hours, but the remaster makes it so much faster because you have a fast forward for combat option, and that gets rid
Hmm.
of so much time. Like that just like speeds things up. I will also say I used a recruit guide as a refresher because I was like, I'm not gonna wander around trying to find everyone. Let me just where do I gotta go to get these people? Okay, cool, 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 cool. I think my game time was like 14 hours, 15
Wow.
hours.
Okay. Yeah.
So like, not I mean not a short game, but by RPG standards, pretty bite size. And it was good. Like 1 is solid. You could tell 1 is like the first one. Like I knew this already because I played the series before, but kind of with a refresher on it, I'm like, oh yeah, I kind of forgot 1 was like this rough around the edges and some stuff. Like there are just certain systems and things that weren't really figured out yet in that game that they refined in 2, which I did start to, but I'm not very far in that yet. Um, but just on its own, like solid, good RPG. I feel like I usually would recommend to people like 2 is most people's favorite and most people's best one, but I heavily recommend playing 1 first, and I stand by that. So yeah, anyone that picks up the collection, definitely worth going through them both.
And that is a part of our topic of the show for this week, which
Oh,
we'll get into later. Uh, cool. Yeah, I want to. Yeah, thankfully, Konami was kind enough to send a code to me to play it, but I am playing something else I cannot talk about currently, so I have had no time whatsoever to even jump in on that.
yeah.
But that is something I definitely want to check out soon. Because I actually saw some. I came across just like some random person on TikTok streaming Suikoden. I don't know if it was the first game or the second game, but I immediately was just like, oh, this was checking a lot of boxes for me.
Well,
I was just
especially
like,
after our talk with Aiden last week, I'm very curious to hear your thoughts on it because I hadn't thought about like because obviously I haven't played through them all. This has been a topic we've talked about a few times, but like uh the parallels he drew between it and Trails, I was like, oh yeah, actually, Suikoden was like one of the only other RPGs to do that kind of like continuing same universe overarching story with like recurring characters and stuff. Like I didn't really think about that. Like that's yeah, like that does tie in a little bit into what people love about Trails. So I'm very curious, with how much you love that franchise, how well Suikoden kind of it's a little older in its approach to some things. Like one
yeah,
especially is very rougher writing. Um,
hmm
but it's really neat to see the way that the games like have ongoing plot bits between them in terms of like at least specific character arcs.
yeah, but like seeing the I have come to realize, and this might just be because like Pokemon was like my first JRPG in a real way, that I am just an absolute sucker for JRPGs with great town music. And I'm just like watching this guy play Suikoden, and I'm like, oh, the town music is so good in this game. Like, this is like giving me the thing. Like, it's something that I should not like. I don't think I should like care to the degree I do. But it was just like that was the first thing that I noticed was like, oh, the music is so good,
Well, the
and
music's
it
great
like
in those games.
it immediately like gave me like, oh, this is like Pokemon, this is like Trails, because like that was the thing with Trails, right? It's just like I felt like every time I heard a new song in Trails was like the how do I explain it? Because like because you're going on this adventure in a traditional sense that you do in like Pokemon. So like Trails, even though the amount of JRPGs I've played and like how I was like 30 or like 27 or something like that when I started playing Trails, I was just like, oh, this is giving me the same like itch that Pokemon gave me, and I've never really experienced this before. It's like, oh, there's the route music, and then there's the town music, and then there's and it's like it sounds a little ridiculous. Um, it just sounds a little bit ridiculous, like me saying it's like, isn't that all JRPGs? But it's not. It's not. It has this like aspect to how the music like breathes into the setting of the world,
Yeah.
where it just like it is a part, it adds to the personality of like the places that you're going. And so like yeah, like I shouldn't remember the song that I listen to once I leave the bright house in the beginning of Trails, but I do.
No, like music is super important. Like that, I don't think that's ridiculous at all to have that association where like because that does impact your memory and experience of the game. Like even if it is something just like town music, right? Like I feel like a lot of people tend to give a lot more lip service to like battle themes and stuff because it's like, oh,
Mhm.
you're really getting into it with like the boss fights and stuff. But like town music sets the mood. Pokemon's a great example of this. We'll talk about this more on Campfire Catalog, but Chrono Trigger I think is another excellent example. There's a few uh, just different songs for different areas that just are burned into my memory. Uh,
Mhm.
Very random side tangent that just you reminded me of this talking about it. You want to talk about remembering tracks? One of Christine's favorite games of all time is Dragon Age Origins, and
Mhm.
like she didn't really play the later games. She played two and got very angry and like stopped playing, but she loves the first one. She played it a ton, and we were watching some random documentary. Don't remember what it was, but she like immediately pauses during this one bit and goes, "That song's from Dragon Age." I was like, "What are you talking about right now? I know that track. That's from Dragon Age." She went and looked up the documentary and like went for the sources and went like, "There it is. Yep, originally written for Dragon Age, and they just used the rights to use it in this documentary." And it's like, how did you pick up on that? And it was like a
Yeah.
town theme or something, like it was just like that ingrained.
Yeah, it really is. I was, I'm not trying to go too deep into this, but I was listening to one of I don't like, you think that as someone who loves video games and stuff like that, I'm someone that listens to a lot of video game music outside of just the general gaming. I'm not. I don't really like Trails. Like the album for the first two Sky games, I do every now and then, and I do for Johto, like for the Johto uh soundtrack. But specifically I listen to this orchestral cover done by Braxton Burks. It's called Johto Legends. And you can listen to this on Spotify. Like if you're listening to this, like, and every time I listen to that album, I'm just like re-reminded of just like how fucking good that soundtrack is. Just like how and it's not every song that's covered, but like it gets to a lot of the main points. But even if you go back and listen to the like the Crystal, or I'm sure like it's in Gold and Silver as well, um, like the Game Corner music in Goldenrod City has no right going as hard as it does. It's an absolute banger. It's like I'm just playing some mini games here. And so yeah, I think that as I've gotten uh like as I've like progressed and played more JRPGs, I've come to learn that like man, like having consistently like good music to like represent the different parts of the journey I'm on, like with town, like the
Mhm.
town music or like the travel music or anything like that, though that gets a lot of bonus points for me in a way that like I don't know if that does for everyone else. It's not even just like, oh, the music's good. It's like, no, like the music really like represents and sets the tone or like the setting, or like it's like one of those things where like you think about the song and you think about like, oh, I'm in Azalea Town, I'm in
Yeah.
Violet City. Like it's just so good. And so yeah, that was the tweak that I was like kind of getting in my brain when I was watching that person play Suikoden. I'm like, oh, this is gonna give me what I want. Like I've been waiting for another game to come up like this. But anyway, go ahead.
No, I mean that about wraps it up. Just
Okay, okay.
you know,
I just went on a long tangent and I was just like just wanted to see if you had anything else to say.
no, that
Um
about covers it. It's a good game. Check it out. I'm much more excited to finish up two, because two is definitely like the
yeah.
bigger. I actually read something. I haven't verified the source on this, but apparently in older interviews they even talked about how two was kind of always the plan, but they were like, "This is we have ambitious ideas here. We haven't even made an RPG yet. Hold on." And so like the first Suikoden was intentionally like kind of like a test run of like, let's make a game. We'll make it the same universe, and then we're gonna build into the actual like bigger plot we want to do.
I actually do have a question for you about Suikoden, that as someone who has played the older games, and I just want to kind of know how much it like really matters to you, because I know that we've had similar conversations. Heard there's been some translation changes that are a bit odd. Um,
Uh, yes and no. It's not that there's translation changes; it's more that they double down. So the original translations for Suikoden 1 and 2 are not great. 2
uh-huh.
especially. It's understandable, but it's not always completely accurate to what the Japanese script was. And 2 in particular had this weird thing where like for whatever reason they decided to have ellipses everywhere all the time. Like there's just like every conversation would just have multiple dot 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 dot.
Hmm.
Um, and so with this remaster, instead of a fresh translation, they basically punched up and fixed the original translation. So
Hmm.
what really could have used like a fresh new start, they instead just kind of fixed what was already there. So it's not any worse than just playing the game like the original ones. I think translation wise, you probably are getting like a slightly better experience in terms of like how readable it is and everything. But in terms of being accurate to like the Japanese script, uh, yeah, it's not as good as people were hoping. There was a lot of hopes that they would like do a fresh new translation for this, and that does not appear to be the case.
So what I heard was that there were certain like notable moments where in that game story where like certain dialogue was being said that like has now changed, and it just like people are like, nah, this this
Doesn't work as
cannot
well.
be it any yeah, this cannot be the new line. Like it's
Um,
just too like I guess it's like too iconic
sure.
for fans of the series, I guess.
It might be references to stuff in two because I've only started two and I haven't
Okay.
like made my way through it yet.
We'll report back on it then.
Yeah, one, I
We'll
didn't
get back
notice
to it.
that as much. I'm sure there are some lines where I also was just, it's been a while since my last like fresh playthrough
Mhm.
of the originals. So it's also possible I might just not remember that as clearly. I didn't notice that too much with one, but two, that very well may be the case. Especially because again, two is the one that a lot of people are very like, no, this is the one. You know, this is the good shit.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, I want to. I would really like to play at least Suikoden 1. Here's the thing. Here's where I'm at. I want to play Suikoden 1 before I like get into like the Death Stranding and everything like that. But then I know that Suikoden 2 is right there.
Literally right
And
there.
I want to play it because everyone's like, oh, this is one of the best JRPGs ever. So I don't know. I need to play at least. I do need to play at least one. I
Yeah.
was sent a code, and I want to fulfill the. I need to fulfill.
Yeah.
Um.
And one is again pretty short. I mean, by RPG
Yes.
standards.
Yes.
Two is longer. Not like crazy longer. I want to say that one probably is like also in like the high tens, low 20s. But so much of those games playtime in the original PS1 was like battle loading and how long battles would take, and now you're just fast forward, man. Just like let's get through these fights.
Okay. Yeah. We'll see how I come along with that. So as I've been saying, I've been playing a game that I can't talk about right now. Um, but I did try out a demo for a game called for that game AI Limit that I talked about
Oh
last
yeah.
week. Yeah, so I played the demo and like this isn't to say like this game is bad or anything like that because it's not. But it just kind of reminds me like how much I just don't really care about traditional Souls likes.
Mm.
They just don't really, which they should because
What
I love
what
being
does that
challenged.
mean for you? Just because like I've talked to different people about Souls likes, and it seems like there's never been a great like unified definition of what that means. So what do you mean by like a traditional Souls like that you don't enjoy?
Um, so I mean, man,
Is
I
that
feel like
too
I'm
on the
opening a
spot?
can. I just feel like I'm opening a can of worms right
Oh no.
now.
Oh no.
Well, like obviously, like there's like the bonfire stuff. There's like killing enemies, getting the currency to
Yeah.
level up and stuff
Sure.
like
And then
that.
bonfires reset spawns outside of bosses.
Yep.
So like that kind of
Mm-hmm.
general flow of currency and okay.
Yeah, and then you fight a boss for an extended period of time until you like just kind of are either patient enough or you understand the pattern enough to beat that boss. And like I love being challenged. I love challenging boss fights. But I think the sense of like games where you don't really have a whole lot to your like arsenal to deal with that boss fight is not like fun for me. Like it's like, hey, I want a challenging fight, but I also want to be equipped in a way that is like fun. Like I, you know, I haven't played any of the Dark Souls games. I played Demon Souls. I enjoyed it. I didn't finish it, but like I actually want to go back and finish it. But it was also just like, yeah, this is like, you know, a traditional Souls like. I played a good chunk of Elden Ring, but I was just like, I don't really need to finish this game. I feel like I got what I got out of it. But I love Sekiro. I love Sekiro
Yeah.
because the combat, the action, like the stuff that you do in that game is so much fun.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
It's
And like
in a way that the other Souls games for me aren't.
yeah, and
And
I would even
so
argue that in some ways Sekiro like isn't a Souls like. It has shared
as
things,
Souls
but
like
like
elements, as
yeah,
Souls like elements, but as
sure.
an action game. It is
Yeah.
an action game, but it has bonfire. It has like those aspects to it.
Certain parts, yeah.
Yes, but it's just like a great example of like why I like that, but I don't like or I don't really care for
Mhm.
all this other stuff. Where it's just like you know, I don't find this like super big gratification of beating these bosses. It's more like, oh, this is just a whole like a big old waste of time for me. Like I'm not really digging this, or like it's not really grabbing me or making me
Sure.
want to like push on to the next thing.
Yeah, and that was the
Um,
vibe you were getting from this AI game.
yeah, like I was hoping because like I think that was like the main thing when I played like First Berserker and when I played AI Limit, where it's just like, give me a Souls like, that's fine. Just give me more access to more things. Give me access to more abilities, skills, whatever that like make it feel like that I'm not just dodging around, waiting for an opening, and then rinse and repeating until I kill it. Like that is not fun to me. Um and so AI Limit does kind of have that. It does. Like you beat like, you beat this like mini boss partway through and then you pick up its railgun. So basically you have like a it's kind of like a not like a spell per se, but think of that like you only have so many limited uses and you kind of have to wait over time to use it like kind of like an ability.
Sure.
And it's cool, but it doesn't really like it doesn't change it enough for me. You know what I mean?
Right.
Um and so it's like one of those things like, you know, I'm sure if someone's listening to this right now, they're probably like, "What the fuck is Cam talking about?" But and part of that is valid because like I also just like don't. Admittedly, I don't 100% know what I want in a real way because I haven't found it yet. Like I haven't found
You haven't felt that
that.
moment in those games.
Yeah, I haven't found like that game that is a Souls like that is like more of the traditional Souls like, not like Sekiro because Sekiro it's very fast. It's very
Yeah.
it has a great parry system that I absolutely adore. Um, but it has like the more Dark Souls, Bloodborne, Elden Ring vibes, but it gives me more of what I want in like a Sekiro, where it's like there is like a little bit more that I have to juggle with and approach and things like that. And maybe that's just like, hey, that's just Sekiro, and you're just gonna have to play Sekiro, and that's fine. That might be the case. Like I would love a Sekiro too, or
Yeah.
like just like same
Did,
combat system, whatever. But
did you try? Not that they're directly equatable, but in terms of at least a little faster paced, Stellar Blade.
I've not played Stellar Blade yet. My roommate has a copy of Stellar Blade because I got it for him for his birthday, I think last year. Um, and so I haven't played it yet. I do want to give it a shot. I also want to. I did actually one of the uh Souls-like type games I want to go back to that I really enjoyed and thought was really interesting was actually The Surge.
Yeah, the kind of sci-fi future one.
Yeah, because like it's because they have they like weak points for the enemies. So it's like, oh, you have to hit like a joint in the leg or like, oh, a joint in the arm. It's like, oh, okay, there's a little bit more strategy to this than just like,
Yeah, there's a gameable target outside of like the most you get for that in like Dark Souls games inside of parries is like, oh, you can cut the tail off of certain enemies. So like run up and try to do that, and then just keep hitting them wherever it's easiest to not get hit back.
yeah. So like I want to at some point when I'm kind of in the mood to do so, I do want to go back and like play the Surge, and if I like the Surge, play the Surge too, because I have heard from people that played that game that it is like very overlooked and underrated.
Mhm.
So I do want to check that out. But yeah, like AI Limit, it's like it's definitely not a bad game. If you were looking for like a Souls game that's like Dark Souls, you were going to have a good time with that. But I was just for me, I was just hoping it would be a little bit different, enough to be like, oh, this is finally like a Souls like that I can see myself going all the way through and finishing. And I don't think this is it. I think, but I still like have not completely dismissed First Berserker. I actually want to for yeah, First Berserker. I actually do want to give that a shot because I've enjoyed what I played so far and I'm just kind of want but at this point I'm just trying to see like how much more it's going to like kind of evolve over time
Sure.
before I like know like, oh, this is something I want to see all the way through or this isn't for me and I don't want to like invest more time into it.
Sense.
So yeah, that's what we've been playing this week. And now we're gonna go into our topic of the show, which is going to be about like in general across many different franchises. And this is something that we talked about we touched upon in our monthly Q&A this month. And that's like where is the best place to start in all of these major JRPG franchises?
Yeah, especially in the ones that are maybe a bit daunting, where it's like there are 15 mainline games, not including all these side titles, and oh god, where do I start?
Yeah. Yep. Where do you want to start with this?
Well, I
Kevin.
think to begin with, I do want to say that when it comes to this question of like where to start for certain series, there's kind of two different answers for some franchises, which kind of comes down to like where's the best place to start from purely a content standpoint, where it's like, hey, this is the game that's going to get you into the series. It's going to introduce all the main core elements. It's going to be the thing that really like I think is the best sales pitch really for why you should play the rest of it. And then there's those games where it's like, look, that's great and all, but that game that you're saying is great only existed on the DS and is like $140 now. What can I play on a current system at a much better price point? Like what's an accessible where like you can track this down, even if it's a part of certain memberships or something. There's a couple things that have opened up thanks to things like PlayStation Plus and the Nintendo Switch Online benefits. But just keeping in mind that like yeah, there's going to be some games where there's a great option that might just be harder to get depending on what older systems you still have on hand.
Yeah.
And I think a good example, actually, might as well segue into it right away. Uh, I think that for Fire Emblem, because when I think intro to Fire Emblem from like a pure gameplay standpoint, because this isn't my like number one, but it is, I think, a very very good one, and it does a great job of kind of hitting a balance point of what's in all the other games. Is Awakening, which makes sense because Awakening was kind of the game that like
Save the
redid the
franchise.
formula a little bit, and it's also why the series is still alive today. Basically, like it basically saved the franchise.
At least in the
Um,
West.
oh yeah, Easter like overall, like just raw sales wise, like it definitely helped that series out of a
But
pinch.
but wasn't it like supposed to be like this is the last game coming out West ever?
Probably,
Like
yeah. I mean, it might have
until
been
it
part of it
was
just to
successful?
yeah.
Okay.
I can see that. I don't know that off the top of my head, but I
I'm pretty
believe
sure
that.
that's the thing. I'm pretty sure
Yeah,
that's the thing.
because I mean, the series came late to the U.S. as well. I mean, we our first entry was 7, which we don't call
Yeah.
7 here, but uh, yeah. Um, but I think Awakening is just such a great balance point of like what I love about a lot of different Fire Emblem games, and there are things about it that at the time I didn't like as much coming from the older games, and that ended up being the stuff that they leaned heavier into with later ones, and I still like the later ones too. But I really do think Awakening is such a great balance point of like all the different styles. Because that was even one of the things about it when it came out is that it incorporates a lot of mechanics that were kind of one-offs in previous games, with things like uh, being able to like have the kids or characters having unique skills, class skills. A lot of these were pulled from different games and kind of all turned into one mishmash that balanced it all together so well. The only problem is it's a 3DS game, which if you don't have a 3DS, I'm now asking you to buy a 3DS, which ups the total cost a lot more. In which case, if you're looking at like current systems, I think there's a couple answers depending on what you're looking for, but probably Three Houses, which is a little weird because Three Houses is such a different game from the rest of the franchise. But it's like it's that or an anniversary game, which is honestly I think not one of the better ones, and it relies a lot on your nostalgia for games you haven't played yet. If you're just getting into the series, um,
Yeah. I don't
or going on Nintendo Switch Online and like just straight up playing like 7. Like Blazing Blade is great. It's just it's the older style, so there might be some adjustment.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard some interesting things about Engage. I know some people that like you that think it's fine, and then I know some people that really really like it. I haven't played it yet, but I do have it. And I think I'm in line to agree with you. Like Fire Emblem Awakening is one of my favorite games of all time, and that was my first Fire Emblem. And I think it just does basically everything right. And I think that it really is kind of like the only game Fire Emblem game out in the West outside of like, Blazing Blade now on the Switch Online that is kind of like what a traditional Fire Emblem game is. Like when you think about Fire Emblem,
Oh,
because like
sure, like
Shadow of
older stuff.
Valencia is like its own thing. Three Houses is its own thing. Engage is kind of its own thing just because of the whole like anniversary like nostalgia. Let's like having all these like series
Cameos of all the past
characters.
characters, yeah.
Yeah, that it's just like, it's kind of its own thing as well. That and like unless you pay an abundance of money for Path of Radiance or Radiant Dawn,
Which are so good. I think
yeah, which
I
are
think they need to
yeah,
do a collection or something. I'm so
I
surprised that
want it
hasn't
more
happened
than
yet.
anything. I want it more than anything on the
Just
Switch is for
give me
them
a
to port those
duology of
games.
those two. Just do it.
Yeah, that's for real. Like that's what I need. That's what I want. Um, and so, but I mean, like, there's also because even with like Fire Emblem Fates, right? It's like, yeah, it's like Fire Emblem, but then the story elements are kind of like you choose a path, and like two of those paths aren't super interesting,
Yeah,
and then the other path like is really good, but it's also notably way harder than other Fire Emblem games. So it's just like
yeah.
those are like a bunch of asterisks as well.
Fates is a giant can of worms. I like Conquest specifically, which is the one you were referencing as being like
Yeah,
the better one. That's also more difficult. Um, but Fates is kind of a can of worms. It does some things better than Awakening in terms of like certain combat mechanic rebalances and like how you develop characters, but it is heavily overshadowed by its storytelling and just certain other choices that are like bizarre and feel out of place. Whereas Awakening is just great. Yeah, like end of the day, I think Awakening is the way to go if you want to start the franchise and you don't mind tracking down a 3DS copy. Otherwise, yeah, three houses or maybe seven, depending on if you want to play like classic Fire Emblem or new Fire Emblem, or get a taste of both. You know,
yeah.
you got a
Uh,
franchise you want to. I feel like there's a couple easy ones here with like what's your stance on where to start Trails, Cam? What is
where's my stance on Trails? I mean, my stance is there's a if I'm all bias aside, there's a should versus could discussion here.
sure?
You should start at the beginning. You should start with Trails in the Sky because that's where the story begins. It is an ongoing story. It is all connected, and it all like the world building happens as you're playing through these games. And so if you start at a later arc, there's going to be things that are just like already existed. And so like when you go back to those games, they're going to feel more like prequels than actual like, hey, you're experiencing this in real time. You don't know what the future holds, like that time, that type of stuff. That I think what makes Trails so special is like learning everything as the characters are learning it, and the world building and all that. But you can start with any arc. Any arc you can start with. You can start with Trails in the Sky, you can start with Trails from Zero, you can start with Trails of Cold Steel 1, or you can start with Trails Through Daybreak. But I think that the further you go along that path, uh I'm not going to say for me, and the things that make me think makes Trails special, the things that make that series special are going to feel less present. Um and so like I think that this game like Falcom tries to make it feel like, oh, this is a new arc, these are new characters, and they try not to like bring up past things unless it's necessary for the narrative and the plot. But it's also like, nah, dog, like all of this stuff has happened in this world, like, and they just like they'll try and like hand wave it, and so like they don't like kind of introduce that stuff. Sometimes, not all the time. So they don't sometimes they don't introduce that stuff properly, or they'll just like kind of like be very coy with their words and the dialogue, being like, oh, my friend from Arabonia, and it's just like, oh, you're obviously talking about Rain, or you're obviously talking about like Crow, or like you're talking about these characters that players should already know.
Right.
Uh And so for me, I think that you should start from the beginning. It's going to start being easier to start from the beginning because of the remake, but if you have Steam, if you have a Steam Deck, um if you have GeForce Now, you can do it through GeForce Now. You can start with the original Trails in the Sky, and because I had someone on Blue Sky literally today, Jake Steinberg. He messaged me or like commented on one of my posts being like, "Hey, so I've been told by a lot of my a lot of like of my audience that I need to start this series. And where do I need to start?" And I said like, in my in my opinion, you have two options. You either A, start with Trails in the Sky on Steam and just go from there, or B, you wait for the remake, but also know that there's this giant cliffhanger at the end of this game that you're not going to want to wait 2 to 3 more years for part two of this remake. And so I would just start with Trails in the Sky on Steam. And then if you like it, you got a remake
Yeah.
coming. And it looks amazing.
Which
Like
does look very shiny. Like I meant to bring this up earlier, that new trailer that, we saw, like I love the way that game
the
looks
art
in motion.
direction.
The art direction,
Yeah.
but also just like I feel like anime art style can sometimes end up looking a little stiff
Yeah.
in motion games, and it's so fluid looking in what
Yes.
we're seeing for Trails. Like the way everyone's animated, the facial expressions mixed in, body movement, it just looks so good.
Yes. It really like I was worried because I do. So for those that don't know, like Trails kind of goes this like isometric-esque perspective, chibi characters that I found to be super charming into like full 3D, starting with Cold Steel. And so like, and even though it looks much better now, like in like Daybreak looks great, good stuff. I was just like, I really love the original like direction that they went with like the characters and things like that. Um and so I was worried that, especially in the Liberal games, that like that was not going to translate well into a 3D space. Because like in Trails into Reverie, you do get to experience Crossbell in full 3D. And I don't like I don't think it's bad in any sense, but like I was just like, yeah, but this isn't Crossbell from the Crossbell games.
It's
You know
not
what I mean?
hitting the same way. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not hitting the same way. And I think that, and I thought that Liberl was even stronger in that sense, like of just like the sense of identity. And but man, everything I'm seeing, I'm like, this looks so good. They're really just like nailing the tone and the vibes of Liberl, because Liberl just feels like this part of it feels like medieval. That's not like don't take that literally, but just like the vibes of it, because like of
Sure.
what people wear and like the weapons that are being used outside of like a gun and a cannon, and it gets a little bit futuristic. But
And
like
people get cell
there's
phones
always
eventually.
there's yeah there there is this like real grounded like early technology type vibe that the Liberal games, the Sky games specifically have, that makes it feel so like it honestly it feels innocent. That's like
Hmm.
I think that's the word I'm looking for. Like exploring Liberl, like yeah, things happen and things like there's bad guys and stuff, but like just like like exploring through Liberl, it just feels so like innocent, carefree, like just just like kind of like a butterfly flying in the wind type vibes.
Sure. Very like
And it's
storybookish almost, or like
yeah, it
yeah.
kind of yeah. And it's and I just loves it. I love it. Like there's like a whimsy about Liberl. Um and I just think it looks great. So that would be my thing. It's just like I think if at all possible, like I would rather you wait an extended period of time and start with Sky than start with a different arc now and play
Sure.
now. I just think that that is the way to play that series in its most like genuine like and intended form. It's kind of like, again, for the like if you like anime, right? If you like anime and you haven't played Trails. Picture it like, oh, you're gonna start One Piece at Alabasta or Water 7. Um, or you start Naruto with Naruto Shippuden. It's just not gonna be the same
Sure.
as
You're
if you
getting into
start from the
Dragon
beginning.
Ball, so you start with Super. It's like, wait, that's not.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's a great example.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's my uh weekly trail spiel. What do you want to talk about next, Kevin?
Well, let's go to the big guy. Let's do Final Fantasy real quick.
Okay.
Because Final Fantasy is weird, right? Because
Mhm.
it's not like in the case of Trails, you have the very strong argument of plot arcs and like, oh, obviously you want to start at the beginning, and there are other ways to start where there's a beginning, but fine. Final Fantasy, they're all fresh, right? Like like there are direct sequels, but no one's gonna think I should start at Lightning Returns. Like, should I play 7? Should I play 10? Should I play 16? Should I like there's so many to choose from, and a lot of them have been kept available, right? Like all the Pixel remasters make sure there's a way to play 1 through 6. 7, 8, 9 have all been made available on current platforms, 10 as well, even if it's got the
12.
not very good phases. Uh, like the only ones that are kind of weird is like 11, which that's an MMO entry anyway, so that's a whole other thing. Um,
Yeah.
let me feel this to you real quick. Yeah, like which what's your knee jerk reaction as far as getting into the series?
Um, I think it's very circumstantial. It depends on like what type of game you're looking to play.
Sure.
I think that if you want to play something modern, it's 100% 7 remake.
Yeah,
Not a doubt in my mind.
I agree wholeheartedly.
If you want to play something that like more, I guess like kind of represents the series at its best, or like not its best because like best isn't like, oh, this is the best game, but in the sense of like uh everything and anything that you could experience in a Final Fantasy game is in this game. I would say 6 or 10.
Yeah, I was actually gonna say like those were my main two. 6 because it's like the 6 is kind of the one that everyone always shouts about. It's the gimme. I think there's an argument for 4 just because 4 is a little simpler in some ways.
Sure.
If you're gonna play a
Yeah.
classic one, 10 though I think is actually a great argument for like kind of a balanced midpoint, right? Like, okay, you don't want to deal with old school pixelated graphics or something. You want something that at least looks a little bit, more up to date. Which, again, the 10 remasters mess up the faces a little bit, but overall, it's still a great looking game as far as environments and such.
Yeah.
And I think it's just a good, solid game all around. Like, I think even though it's not using the ATB system, its approach to turn based, I think, is a very easy to understand like approach that also has its own like little fun quirks. Um, Great cast, great. I think it's a very good like if you just want to know what Final Fantasy is, especially in the classical sense, uh, like that or going back to the pixel days of 4 and 6 is definitely the way I would recommend.
Yeah, because
I
one of
think
the things that
more
we
so than
mentioned,
original 7, to be honest.
yeah, yeah, I would say I like I want to give it another try, but last time I played like the OG7, I was struggling. I really was. I was like, I don't know about. I don't. I remember when Odell, my friend Odell Harmon Jr., who works at PlayStation now, but he was doing games journalism stuff. He went on Kind of Funny and he said at the time I thought it was blasphemy. He's like, yeah, like Final Fantasy 7 does not hold up, y'all. That game's trash now. And I'm like, you're crazy. And then shortly after I played Final Fantasy 7 and I'm like, he
I
might be right actually.
don't know if I agree with all that. I mean, I have, I haven't done a full playthrough in quite some time, but like my last full one was, I mean, in the past decade. And I did check it
there
out a bit after Remake came out because I wanted to like replay the segments that were, just in the opening, and I went a little farther and played some more. Like, it definitely does show its age. I don't know if it's trash, but it
No,
definitely shows
I'm
its
not gonna.
age
I'm not
like
saying that.
far
I'm not
more.
saying that. But
Yeah,
it's definitely like does not hold up in certain aspects.
sure.
And also like with the like the remakes is interesting because like it's like kind of like a pseudo sequel, pseudo remake, right? Like, but I don't think that. I think that you're fine to play remake, and if you really dig what's happening, go back and play the original, get the whole story, and then continue in Rebirth, because like there's definitely things that like you will not know unless you know the story of Final Fantasy VII already. And if that's like what you're really like digging about 7 Remake, then do that. That's what I would do. That's what I would recommend. And then
100%.
yeah. Um but one of the things that I want to like rewind a bit because back to 10, because we talked about this on the Q&A, that 10 is really great too because Titus, the protagonist, he gets isekai. Like he doesn't know anything that's going on in this world. Uh like so if you know, if this is your first Final Fantasy, you're basically in the shoes of Titus in a literal sense too, where you're just like, I don't know about Final Fantasy, I don't know how this game works, and you're kind of learning everything along the way. And then if you're just like, oh, I really like this experience, then you can like kind of dive into some other sectors. But it also just kind of depends on like how much you tolerate like, again, like retro games. Like if you don't want to play like retro games, then yeah, I wouldn't say play 6, even though 6 is arguably the best Final Fantasy. Like from just word of mouth, from what I have not played 6 yet, but just from what people have said and like the
No,
kind of
I
like
mean, it is consistently a lot of people's number one, and even if it's not, it's very consistently in people's like top three. Like
yeah,
it's
easy.
that entry, right? Like that,
Yeah.
like seven is the one that is historically significant, and I would never argue against that. But as far as
Hmm.
just raw, like I played this game start to finish and ate it up, loved it, and it's just fires on all cylinders. Six is actually the one for a lot of people.
Yeah. And so it really just kind of depends on what you're looking for. Again, like, and you speak more highly on this than me because I haven't played it, but like a lot of people really love 9.
Oh
A
yeah,
lot of people really love 9.
yeah, I love nine. I would not recommend it as the first one you play, but I do love it.
Okay.
I think the other ones. I think the other ones make an easier segue. I actually really like the argument you bring up for 10, where like the isekai element plays a little bit into like because you're not just fresh to that setting, you're fresh to everything about Final Fantasy. It's like you don't know who Bahamut is. Like what does that matter to you?
Yeah.
And so that does make I think a very interesting argument for like 10 being an interesting starting point. I think if you
Also,
want to play like classic style, I lean more and more towards that one being the answer. Even if you are cool with retro, like I think 10 is just a nice midpoint of like before and after. Kind of like what I was saying with Awakening, like it just walks that line of like doing well what kind of led the series during that time, and then some of its own changes too.
well, here's the thing that's interesting about Final Fantasy 2 is that like Final Fantasy is from a gameplay standpoint, specifically. Because we're gonna talk about Dragon Quest soon, and Dragon Quest does experiment as well, but not more with gameplay, but more with narrative and like structure and things like that.
Sure.
That like Final Fantasy uh Final Fantasy tries to innovate on gameplay in basically every entry. And so some in big ways, some in small ways. And I think that 10 is one of on top of again just kind of having checking all the boxes. It also doesn't innovate in a way that like or it doesn't introduce something that's like so like kind of left field like the junction system in Final Fantasy VIII where you're going to be like, "Oh, I don't understand." Cuz like JRPGs for some people don't like menus.
Yeah.
People don't like,
I mean,
go
you say that the sphere grid might be a little overwhelming, especially on first seeing it.
that is
It
yeah,
does
that
guide
is
you
the
through it really well though, but it is a lot.
yeah, that is the worst part. Like that is but it's still like manageable compared to like, hey, so in the gameplay you basically like do the junction system and you pull different things and like it's completely RNG. Don't worry about that. Like that is way more of a of an annoyance that even JRPG fans are just like notoriously are
Yeah.
not
No,
like
eight is another one
huge
I would not
fans of.
recommend be your first game. I like eight.
Sorry,
It
Ben.
would not be. It would not be my. Hey, I'm not even picking my favorite as an intro. Like it's
I
certain
mean,
games just
me
kind
either.
of
Like
ease you in a little
me
bit.
either.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, seven remake. 7 remake is interesting because like it is a mainline Final Fantasy, but it also like is kind of it's kind of seen differently a little
Sure.
bit. I mean, I don't know if you
Well,
agree with that, but like,
Well, I think the main way I would the main reason why Seven Remake stands out to me as an option is just the fact of like, do you really not like the idea of traditional RPG like party command input type stuff, and you need a little more fast paced action? Okay,
yeah,
Remake's going to give you that midpoint that introduces some of those concepts, but keeps the action a lot better. And I love the combat system in it. Like, it's one of my favorite things about the remakes, really. Um,
yeah, and no, I mean the combat in remake is
yeah,
basically perfect. Like in my eyes, it's like I mean, Rebirth made it better, but like even in remake, I'm like, this is incredible. Um, but I also think that like if you were thinking more of like, oh, I want to do some open world stuff, I think 15 is the best representation of that. And like, granted, there's only been like really 15 and Rebirth when it comes to that, but like I think 15 does it really well. Like there are a lot of issues with 15, but I think that it's still a really fun game to play. So if it's like one of those things that you're not super like caring about the story, but you want a good open world game, I think Final Fantasy 15 is great. I'm not saying that that is the first one you should play, but I also know a lot of people that did play 15 as their first Final Fantasy and really liked it. So, you know, uh it really just kind of depends. But yeah, I would say like if I'm just all bias aside, I think the two answers like with a bullet, like the most like consistent would be 7 remake and 10.
I would agree with that. With like the only like third choice being like, oh, are you down for old school stuff? Check out six.
Then
Yeah,
6.
6 or
Yeah,
4.
exactly. I
Um,
think all three of those are totally valid.
absolutely. Well, you already name dropped it earlier, so you want to talk Dragon Quest next?
Yeah, so I mean, you have played all of the Dragon Quest mainline except for 10, right? Which is the
Except
MMO.
for 10 and 6. Those are the two blank spots for me. But
Okay,
that's,
okay. But you've
the
played,
majority of the games. So,
yeah.
yeah.
I think this is pretty straightforward. I think that it's like if you were trying to find something that is accessible to play like today, I think it's without a doubt either 3 HD 2D remake or 11, and that just really depends on like, hey, do you want a more traditional Dragon Quest experience, like in the sense of like the retro aspect? And even then, like game feels like with those the remake updates and stuff, game feels super modern.
Yeah. No, I mean,
Um,
if we were somehow in a universe where Dragon Quest didn't exist and someone released 32D HD as like a whatever double A project or an indie game, like it would feel like something up to date. It would not be like out of nowhere,
yeah,
like why does this game work this way? Like,
exactly. And then yeah, 11 is really great too from what I heard, but it's more the traditional, oh not traditional, it's more like the 3D version of Dragon Quest.
yeah,
And so like those games are that game is also like notably super ass long,
yeah,
like super duper
it's
long.
very long. It has three plot arcs. Arguably, the third one is kind of unnecessary a little bit with just how much more it adds. Like it feels like it's done, and then it's not. Um, I would say too that like Dragon Quest is a series that reinvents itself more than I think some people give credit. There's kind of like
Sure.
specific substrains stylistically, and 11's more in line with I would say the style that gets closer to like Final Fantasy and vibes. 8 is another one that does this a lot, and I actually think eight's a
Yeah.
great intro if you have the ability to play it somehow. That's just
Yeah.
difficult because it's only been on PS2 and 3DS, and those are both expensive options now. I think the 3DS one even more so. Um, Not cheap. Uh, but then like 3 2D HD is like a very different older scroll approach of like you just have your main character who is the hero, and you have your party members who are just like
Work
dudes you
for
recruit at a
hires.
bar, and you name yourself and pick their classes. Um, it's a very different vibe. That like the class system is something they've explored in a couple different games. 9 was like I think the last one that really did like a heavy thing with it, not counting the MMO. Um, yeah, I feel like as far as intro goes, though, like the two most recent releases basically are it. Like 11 and 32D HD are a great way to go. I think if you have the option somehow, 8 might actually be my favorite one to say like check this out as like a segue into the rest of it. Um, but again, that's just a little harder to get a hold of.
Yeah, 5 and 8 are the two that I think that like if you have access to them, which technically not hard to get to as there are mobile versions of those games.
For 8 as
Um
well?
yeah.
Huh,
hmm
I did not know that.
Or it was 7 or 8. They did one of those two. I don't remember which, but I think it's 8, the one that they did. And so yeah, it's one of those things like if you're willing to play the mobile version, you can play 5. I wouldn't recommend it. But I also don't like. Not that they're bad versions of those games. I've actually heard that they're pretty good. But I just don't like to play JRPGs on a mobile phone. So that's really kind of like up to the discretion of those that are interested. But like if I had to pick one, I would say Dragon Quest 3. I think it's like it's simple enough. It like it gets the point straight across, and it does a really great job of like making this feel like wow, like this is a journey I went on. Even with it being like a silent protagonist with or a silent party,
Yeah.
but it does make it feel like the things that you're doing, like that you were experiencing this adventure, a lot of incredible moments. It's not as long as other like Dragon Quest 8 and 11. Like I've heard fantastic things about those games. Those games are like 80 plus hours long versus like Dragon Quest 3 being like maybe 30.
Yeah.
And so
And I would also say
that
that
also goes
yeah,
favor.
and I would also say that like I think those ones like I was mentioning earlier, they veer a little bit more into feeling like some other games a little bit, whereas 3 to me is like that's just like pinnacle dragon like that is Dragon Quest, you know? Like that is the game that sums up what it is to like be one. Um
Yeah.
so yeah, not only being like accessible in the sense that we have this new remake that's great, but also because it really does sell I think a lot of what makes the rest of the series special.
Agreed. But also like I haven't played those games yet, so I'm just taking your word for it. But
For
that's
sure.
something that I am slowly but surely working on, as I'm on Dragon Quest V still. What next? Let's get this out of the way quickly. Kingdom Hearts. You start from the beginning. You play in release order. We're done. That's all you need to
There's
know.
not
You start from
really
the
a room
beginning.
for argument on this at
There's
all.
no
Yeah.
argument. No
It's one
argument
continuous
whatsoever.
story that like maybe in the middle, there's like a little bit in the middle you could do slightly out of order or something, but like it's pretty
Nope.
much like play one and then go from there. Yeah.
Yeah. Play one. Play the Game Boy Advance version of Chain of Memories. Not that terrible remake. And that's all you need to know. That's all you need
Thankfully,
to
there
know.
is collections that handle most of this, other than playing the Game Boy version of Chain of Memories. But
Yeah.
God, what a way to mess up a great game. I'm glad that I
Yeah.
wasn't wrong about that because I had that moment where I was like, yeah, I remember thinking the GBA one was so good, and then I played the remake and I was like, was I wrong? Like, is this a remake problem or a me problem? And then you were like, no, 100% remake problem.
No, the remake is not. It's not good. It's not good. Like I understand the good intentions behind it,
Sure.
but not a good game. Not a good game. Like the only thing we get out of that game is we get voice cutscenes. I'm like, that's cool. We got voice remade cutscenes of these moments, but outside of that, not not worth your time.
Yep.
Um.
You want to do some Sega RPGs? We got some SMT Personas.
Oh, okay. I was about to say, I was just like, anything that's not Atlas, I'm completely
Well, I mean,
unknowledgeable about.
yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna. Well, okay, where you start for Skies of Arcadia is you play Skies of Arcadia.
Well, I thought you were gonna be like a Shining Force or
Oh, sure,
like
yeah. No,
Fantasy Star, and I'm like, I don't fucking know anything.
yeah, no, and those are rougher too because there's not a lot of great like other than playing retro collections, and I feel like for a lot of those it is best just to start at the beginning. But yeah, like Atlas specifically, and I'm really thinking like SMT
Yeah,
slash Persona, like those two
yeah. I mean,
franchises.
so SMT, it's really kind of whatever you want to do, to be honest. Like, I don't think because they're all. Well, I mean, you can't play. You shouldn't play Apocalypse if you haven't played SMT4.
Yeah, there's a
But
couple
like,
direct sequels, but
yeah, out of 3, 4, and 5, like dealer's choice, really.
yeah, I mean, five's the most well, 3 and 5 are more accessible. I honestly,
Now,
if
yeah.
if all 3 were available on Switch, I would argue for 4, but uh, because you have to track that down for DS, which is a bit of a headache, um, I would probably lean more towards yeah, like 5 probably. I love Nocturne, but Nocturne is a very easy way to find out if you're a specific kind of person or not. Like there are people who will play Nocturne and are just like, what? Why? Why am I playing this? And other people, it's gonna activate that part of your brain, and you're gonna love it. Like it's like you just know immediately, like if it's for you or not. Um,
Yeah. And what Kevin means by that is that Nocturne is notoriously very hard. And not even saying like it's challenging. No. That game will kick your ass over and over and over again. And it's not like I just gotta grind and get better. It's like, no, you need to figure out the
yeah,
mechanics to get the right abilities for the right demons to beat a specific boss.
yeah, it is.
Like you have to master the mechanics of that
Yes,
game.
system mastery. Like once you know what you're doing, it's not very difficult, but well, not very. It still has its toughness, but like going in, like if you just played that as your first SMT experience, like ever, oh, you're gonna learn some things very quickly that it does not handle like other ones.
Well, that's the thing is like the game is kind of fine until you hit the Matador
Yeah,
boss. Once you hit the Matador boss, you have never hit a difficulty wall as hard in any game ever until you until you get to that boss, and then it feels like I have never played a game where like I get to a boss and I feel like I'm playing a different game. Like I'm literally just like, oh, what's huh? What's going on? Like it is like that. And so yeah, I still need to finish Nocturne. I have not finished that game. I've enjoyed it. I just haven't gone back to finish
yeah.
it.
No, I think
Um,
Nocturne's great. I just don't know if I would tell someone like unless you really want to find out if your brain's tuned to this or
how
not.
much do you hate yourself?
Yeah,
How much do you hate yourself?
yeah,
Or how much pain do you want to feel while playing a game?
sure.
Um,
And then Persona.
but yeah, Persona. I mean,
Come on, you know the right answer. We all know the right answer now. It was debatable before, and it's not
it's
anymore, in my mind at least.
um, I think yeah, like hold on, let's just say ultimately, I think it does fall in line with SMT. You can really choose whichever one you want. Um, there are reasons that make sense for all of them, but I think that like for the sake of easiness and like the way that the game is structured, it's Persona 3 Reload slash Persona 3 Portable. I say Persona 3 Portable because of the female MC. That she's not in Reload, but I think that as someone who played 4 and 5 and then went to 3, um 3 you probably won't notice it when you play it the first time, but like when you play the other Personas and then look back at Persona 3, it is clearly a blueprint, not in just the way of like the calendar system, but just like of the way of just the mechanics of the gameplay and everything like that. Like it feels more. I mean, it does have its own stuff, especially if you go back to the like original Persona 3 or like or Portable, because they did actually get rid of some things in the
Yeah,
remake. But it's it has this kind of bare bones ness that Persona 4 and 5 build off of. But and some of that stuff goes into the favor of Persona 3. Like the calendar system means more than just a calendar system in accordance to the plot of Persona 3. That's all I'll say
yeah.
about that. That does not apply to any of the other Hashino games uh
Use that system.
that use that
Yeah,
system. It's just
metaphor a
oh,
bit, but
that's just
it's different. Yeah,
yeah, but that's just like a game. That's just like the gameplay mechanic system that that they are just keeping
yeah,
to use. 3, there's more there than just
yeah.
that.
And something I really appreciate about three, in retrospect with the later ones too, is that I really enjoy how three. So you have all your party members, companions, and in three, their character revelations and story and like stuff is mostly handled purely within the plot. Four and five, it's like, oh well, we want them to be social links now, so we'll have additional things that come up, and it messes with the pacing in my mind in some weird ways, where I really like how it worked out more in three. The only thing going against three, I think, in this argument, is your tolerance for like random dungeon crawl design because some people just hate Tartarus. Like they just don't like. Which,
Sure.
like, I mean, it exists. You have randomized dungeons in 5 as well, but it's not as much of a focus in the same way. And you have way more
Yeah,
clearly
it's
defined.
not the main
Yeah.
dungeon. It's the what is it called in 5 again?
Geez, what is it called? Metaverse.
Metaverse,
Yeah.
the metaverse.
Oh no.
Yeah. Like the metaverse
Yeah.
is just like a giant like levels of random stuff, but it's not the
Yeah.
dungeons like they are in Tartarus and the TV world. I
Yeah.
forgot
I think
from
they
what's
even just called
called
it the TV
from
world.
4.
The other thing I want to shout out for 3 though, and why I would push it, and this has kind of been an ongoing theme for the things I've been picking for starters. I also think 3 still has a little bit of the tone and flavor and direction that we had from the first 3 games, which is weird to say because 3 is technically 4 in a sense because 2 is a duology. Um, but 3 has a little bit of the leftover flavor that existed in like Persona 1 and both of the 2s that I feel like is much more gone in 4 and 5. Like 4 and 5 commit to a
Oh,
tone
definitely.
shift that like 3 had a tiny bit of, and
I
then they
love
went
4.
all in. And so like 3 to me, like that's always why even before we got Reload, I always liked 3 the most because I fell in love with that kind of storytelling and tone. And while I still very much enjoyed 4 and 5, I wasn't enjoying the direction nearly as much as far as how they handled stuff. Um and so like 3 Reload to me is just such a
Mm,
nice balance point from that perspective too of like the older games didn't handle this way, but they were a little more this tone. Darker even, but
mm.
3 at least maintained some of it, whereas I feel 4 and 5 just leave it behind.
Yeah, I mean, like you're not wrong, but I also those are the things that I really, really like about 4. Because like 4 is my favorite, and it's because of like, hey, 3 was a super depressing game about death and living your life while you have the time to do so, and like uh like a lot of just really really dark stuff, like like experimenting on like children and, and things
Yeah.
like that. And then 4 is just
Like
like
4 has its dark stuff, but it's also very
"Do-do-do-do-do-do."
upbeat in general tone.
It's super
Like
upbeat. Like
dark
if you
things will
look at if
happen
you
and
like
then you're singing the Junes theme like 5 minutes later. Like
like watch yeah no like watch the opening of like Persona 3 FES, or is it the original Persona 3? One of those. Watch just both of them. Watch both of them. And then watch the opening to Persona 4 Golden. It's just like uh it's just like depressing. I'm so sad. I'm so sad. I hate everything. I'm so sad. And then it's just like, we're riding our scooters, we're having fun. And then it's a fucking murder mystery game where in a rural town. And
you're Scooby Doo with
um
higher stakes. Like
yeah, it really does. It does give Scooby Doo vibes. But like it's just so good because like I love the I just love how it's I love that it's rural and how intimate it feels. And I love how it I feel like that the cast like that exists in 4 compared to 3 and 5 are working together because they like want they like at the least the vast majority want to be together, and they want to hang out, they want to do things together. And then 3 and 5 are like, oh, we're kind of just like working together for a common purpose that eventually blossoms into, hey, I care about these about y'all more than just that.
I can see that.
Before it's just like there's just like a different vibe that's just like so much fun. And people hate Teddy, and like I can get why people hate Teddy, but like I don't know, I think Teddy add is more of an additive thing than a bad thing.
I will agree. I don't
um
hate Teddy. I understand him not being people's favorite character, but the hate for the bear is not something I've ever fully agreed with.
yeah. And I actually like don't really care for Morgana. I think Morgana is like a bully for most of that game, and I just like can't fuck with
No,
bullies.
Morgana is my least
um
favorite of the mascots. Koromaru forever, but
yeah. Oh yeah, Koromaru forever. Dog? Yeah.
best dog.
You win. Yeah. Um, and then also just like and listen, like the music in Persona 3 is incredible. Like and 5.
All of
Like
them.
all the
Yeah,
music is
that whole
incredible.
run, like,
But
that's part
I
of what's defined them, I think.
but I think that how do I explain this? I think 3 does the best job musically when it comes to the storytelling through the music. Like the lyricism and like how it's like explaining like what is happening, how these characters are feeling during this moment. And that's incredible. Like you listen to Memories of You and you're just like you know. But like for me, I like Persona 4's music the most because of the vibes. Like I think it just like again, what we were talking about earlier, like the sense of setting, the sense of location, the sense of like what the like this journey is, I think 4 does the best. And so like that's another reason why I love 4 so much. Um and so like there's things to take away from all of the Persona games, all three the mainline Persona games.
Yes,
But
only
I
3.
think
We
that
will not
I haven't played the other three, and they're very different
very different.
games. Uh, but I think that it really is like, hey, you're going to get something different out of each of these games, and it really just kind of depends on what your taste, what your preference is in JRPGs. But I think that you're ultimately going to like anyone you play. It's just kind of putting into perspective, like how good are you about going back to old games? Because if you're not good about it, play 4 Golden first or play P3P first. But the thing is with P3P is like, I do think that you should play the male route before you play the female route
Yeah.
because it's an upgrade. It's an upgrade in every sense of the word. And so, I would say like, oh, play P4 Golden, then play Persona 3 Reload, play Persona 3 Portable so you can play the Fem route, play Persona 5. Like like if
Actually
or
play this
play
many
Persona 5
80-hour games
and
back to
then
back.
go play Persona 5 and then go Royal specifically and then go back to play the Fem MC so you don't play Persona 3 two times in a row. Cuz like while there are like start notable differences, it is still the same game more or less. So, uh it really is dealer's choice. It really just kind of depends on a myriad of things. If I'm like kind of just being the most straightforward, like basic, like not thinking about anything, yeah, Persona 3 Reload would be the pick.
Agreed.
But if I'm putting more things into perspective, probably Persona 4 Golden because there's just such a big jump in uh, visuals, quality, like technical stuff from 4 to 5 that it's just like probably want to play that before you be like, oh, I don't want to go back to
Yeah.
that. So,
Until we get Persona 4 rerun, whatever title we give it.
people are saying it's gonna be like our theorizing
Oh,
rewind
yeah, that would
because
work too.
television.
Yeah.
Oh, rerun is good too. Rerun's good too. I dude, because okay, not to go on a huge tangent, but you saw the thing about how the singer was recording in the studio, and it's the same studio that they record all the Persona music in.
Uh-huh.
So people are like
Or getting
theorizing
some fresh tracks for, yeah.
that they're recording new tracks for Persona 4 remake. Please,
Honestly,
please,
it
God.
makes nothing but sense at this point. Like, I feel like 5 was such, even though 3 is the one that established this style for Persona, 5 is the one that has now imprinted people with like what Persona should look and feel like visually. Like
Yeah,
the 3 and 4 have their UI embellishments, but not like 5 does. Um,
no,
so that makes perfect sense to me that that would happen, like even relatively soon. Not like this year or
yeah,
anything, but
no. I would probably say I could see it being revealed next
like a
year with
27
a
release.
2027 release.
Yeah.
Yeah, at least that's what I hope because like I don't want to wait more than 2 years now. Like I want that shit out soon. Um, and then like what was the last thing I wanted to mention? Um, oh yeah, this year, I need to play through Persona 4 Golden, and I need to finish it. Like I played a good chunk of it, and it's still my favorite. Even though it's the only one I haven't played, it is my favorite.
I didn't even have
Unless
that
it
context
super drops the
before.
ball.
So you haven't even finished it
I'm
before.
pretty sure. No, I'm pretty sure I said it on this podcast before.
I just did.
I'm
You
pretty
may
sure I've said
have,
it.
but I don't recall in this particular conversation. So 4 is your favorite, but you
So
have
I
not
have
even
not-
finished it yet.
I got to the point where like everyone was together, and then I had to stop playing it because at the time I was in college. I was playing on my Vita, but the Xbox One X came out, and I was a poor college student. I'm like, well, I care about the Xbox One X more than my Vita, so I sold my Vita.
Vita no longer means
I
life.
ended up getting I ended up getting the Persona 4 dancing one later. I ended up upgrading, but I was like, I tried so hard to finish the game in time. I just couldn't. It kept going, and so I love that game so much that I need to restart it properly and finish it, see it all the way through, and before the remake. But I want to do it this year. I would like to do it this year. What else is there? Xenoblade. I think with Xenoblade, you can kind of start wherever you want. I think that's another series.
I would say 1 or 2 before 3. Like I would save 3 for last, but I think you could
Okay.
start 1 or 2.
Yeah. That makes
for
sense.
reasons I don't want to get into.
Story reasons.
Yeah.
Like that's a series that's like very loosely connected. It's like it's a standalone until it is not.
Yeah.
That is the best way to explain it.
Yeah, and 3 is the one that kind of drives that concept forward the most. Like 1 and 2 are almost entirely
100%.
standalone. Like you can kind of get little hints of it, but like 1 and 2, you could kind of play either one first and then just save 3 for last would be my only thing there. I had another series that you haven't really played much of Tales, huh?
I haven't played many of them. That's another series playthrough I want to get to eventually. But I feel like that series more than most people are very handholdy on like what are the kind of obvious best places to start, like what are the obvious like best ones. And I think there's really like 3 answers you can kind of go with here. Being Symphonia, Vesperia, or Arise, just because Arise is the most recent one, and that was a pretty big like jump in technology and art style and things like that. I would tell people Symphonia, personally, just because like that's my favorite one. I think it's the best one. But I also, we've talked about this on the show before. The port of that wasn't the best, and so it's not like the end of the world. But if you care about like the whole frame rate thing, being like, oh, it's 30 FPS instead of the 60 FPS on the GameCube, then like maybe that's not the best option for you. But
I would say for that one specifically, because I think I understand where that comes from. The whole like, GameCube's better because you have double the frame rate. I get that. I think playing those games in 30 is fine. I would specify though, if you're going to play like a current version of Symphonia, just avoid specifically the Switch, because that had more problems than just the frame cap,
which sucks. Sucks so much.
Yeah, it's always a headache when Switch versions specifically are the ones, which like it happens sometimes, but when it's with older games, you're like, why though? Like, come on. Like I think Symphonia is a good starting point. There's a part of me that would want to argue like, I mostly agree with that. I think Symphonia is the right way. I think Arise works too if someone just wants to play like the most recent, shiniest one. But so like the funny thing about playing Symphonia first is that like Tales games in general so trope saturated, like incredibly. And the thing is, they're always saturated in the tropes that are big at their time. So Symphonia is just like early 2000s anime tropes everywhere coming out of the characters, to like a silly extent. So it can be a little weird, I think, depending on like what you're used to in like anime content. Like some people, I remember talking to a friend who played it for the first time, and they were just like, "Dude, what was up with like one character spanked the main character? Like what's happening here? Like I can't take this seriously." I was like, oh yeah, I guess that it, yeah, all right, yeah, I can see how some of this age is a little weird, but it's a great game. Like I think Symphonia is usually the one that people point to as like the one.
Yeah, and again, like because they're all outside of like the sequel. Well, is Xillia 2 a direct sequel, or is
Yes.
it in the same universe, different cast?
Uh, it's a direct sequel. Like it's the same
Okay.
cast other than the main character. It's like the main character recruits all the characters from the first one.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah, because those games are more or less anthologies, right? Like they're one-off games.
yeah,
Because even Symphonia does have a sequel, but it's not great.
it is not.
So it's it's one of those things like you don't need to play. Was it Dawn of the New World? Is that what it's called?
I think so, yeah. And even that one, like they didn't port that one like they did Symphonia. It was part of the PS3
Yeah,
port, and then they
but
just didn't support it after that.
yeah, which kind of sucks. Is like I haven't played it. I just heard it's not good, but I want to play it. Like I want to, I'm
Yeah,
curious.
like I get the compulsion, right? Like you want to be able to play it, and also like, well, I mean, if it continues the story, I mean, I kind of want to see more things of these characters, even if it's kind of awkward. Um, yeah, it's not great, but like I totally understand like wanting to play it. Um,
Yeah, and I mean like getting the PS3 isn't too annoying nowadays still.
it's not bad,
That
especially
like
if you
I
don't
could
care
just be
about
like,
back compat.
yeah, it's just like, oh, okay, I'll just get a PS3 eventually, and then I'll just play that specific game. Like I'll play the original on something else, or the remaster on something else, and then go back to play that. Also, wait, no, it's also on the Wii though too, right? That's when
Yeah,
it
it was a Wii
initially
game
came out.
originally. Yes,
Yeah,
when
see, I
I
have a Wii U, so I could just play it on my Wii U, technically.
that's an option.
So that is an option there. Um, are there any other notable franchises that we're missing here?
I mean, I'm sure there's a couple. Like, I think we've tackled the ones that are like the biggest, like huge number of titles
Yeah.
until we realize we forgot something super obvious. I mean, for shits and giggles, you want to do Yakuza?
Oh yeah, of
Count that.
course. No, 100%.
Yeah.
And I think you'll agree with me that there's really only two options, and it's Zero or Like a Dragon.
Uh, I think there's arguments for one. I don't agree with them because I'm a zero person
Hmm.
personally for like where to tell people to start. But like some people argue Kiwami to play that before zero. Um,
Why?
Primarily because Zero is written to be a prequel, and they think that a lot of its deliveries hit harder when you know how things go down in Kiwami.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, it's an argument I've
I
seen.
don't
I
think I
don't fully
agree
agree
with
with it,
that, but
but I've seen that argument a lot. The I will give one thing I will give as like a significant warning is that for a long time I thought Seven was like an excellent like a dragon. I thought Seven was like an excellent place to start because that's how I started. And while you still can, I want to give the warning of, but if you want to play eight after, then you're still gonna have to play all the Kiryu games like in between. Like I don't.
exactly, yes,
I think
correct.
eight requires you to know both Ichiban's story and then everything that Kiryu, at least a highlight reel of it. Like if you want to do
Yes.
like zero, one, and six, but well, one, two, and six, and even then, I would recommend playing three, four, and five if you can. It's a lot. Um, but yeah,
Yeah,
Zero or Like a Dragon, I would lean towards Zero just because it's like just get the
I
Kiryu
agree.
games going. Like just get it out of the way. If for whatever reason you're not clicking with Zero, check out Like a Dragon because that is kind of what happened to me. I realized I just didn't really care that much for Kiryu initially playing Zero, and he grew on me very much over the series. But Ichiban out the gate, just I loved him in that game like right away.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree. Like if I had to say one thing, as someone who also started with Seven, start with Zero. Just
Yeah,
go down the line, and then
I
because
think Zero is the best way to go. Weird outside one, and I only say this as an option if people are intimidated by how much there is to that series. Um, I also think it's not a bad idea to play Judgment because like Judgment is such a
okay.
more like there's only two of them. It's in the same universe. There's a lot of established stuff, but it tells its own story well enough that you don't really need to know the others. And that way you can just dip your toes in and not be worried about there being eight games. And then you'll find you'll love it, and then you have to worry about the eight other games. Or nine other games, 10 other games, however many others you want to count. But yeah, that would be where yeah, I think we're on the same page with this one.
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward, I would say. Um, but yeah, that seems to be all of it. Because like I mean, Pokemon is kind of like people have their favorite generations, but like you can just play whatever one you really want.
Yeah,
Um,
they're
and I like, eh,
still enough that way.
Yeah, and I like, I don't like being this guy, but I just am. Like I just don't think Pokemon has been the same after like Gen 3, arguably Gen 4. And
Uh, I think after
for
Gen
me.
5, yeah, I think post Gen 5 is the split for me because I think Black and White 2 was still wonderful and had a lot of
Oh,
great things
I
going for it.
100% agree
Um,
with you.
yeah,
I
but 6 is
100%
when
agree.
the 3D shift is
Sorry.
really what it was. I think like part of it. That wasn't the
See,
only thing. It wasn't just the visual, but like I think multiple things happened with that shift that brought its current state.
I think for me with Pokemon, and I really never like tried to sit down and really unpack it, so I might just be like rambling a bunch of nonsense, more than normal. But I think with me, and I know people love Sinnoh. I know people love Sinnoh, and I played Brilliant Diamond, Shining and Pearl, and I know like a lot of people don't really like care for that as a remake.
Yeah,
I was really hoping that that game was going to give me a newfound appreciation for the Sinnoh games and or Sinnoh region, and it did not.
no, you got to play Platinum if that's what you want. It's yeah,
Yeah,
and even
yeah. I
then,
have platinum. I have platinum. I just need to play it. I want to do. I want to eventually make a living dex, like like replay through all the games like as
yeah.
naturally as possible, and then like when I get done with it, it's just like okay, let's finish the Pokedex. Let's do it, and like that's what I want to do.
I did that
Um.
for up through Gen 6. Like when 7 was
Okay.
coming out. Yeah, I have a complete dex. Somewhere I have a copy of Pokemon Y that has one of every Pokemon like in boxes.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Um. And I think that like what I really loved about the first three generations is that like it kind of continuously felt like that they were like adding something new and inventive and creative that like made sense for the world. And four just I think four just didn't really do anything for me. Like I think that like I think that the Pokemon designs were like good, not great for me overall. And but it didn't really bring anything new to the table for me like that. And then five, I just hated so many of the Pokemon designs. I just think most of the Unova Pokemon are just trash, literally. Um, but
Yeah. I
that being
care for
said,
Five's designs, but the actual like playable arc is great. But yeah.
yeah, I think Black and White 2 is one of the best Pokemon games.
Yeah.
Like story, like it was incredible. Great. Um, and then like six is when it just really started to just not even just the 3D shift, which at the time I was like happy about, but as the games went like as the game went on, I'm like, oh man, maybe we should have just stayed with the because Unova like visually like looked great, like the pixel art, like all that stuff looked incredible too.
Yeah.
Um, and then it just like introduced Mega Evolutions. I'm like, what? No, I don't like this. And
Personally,
then like
personally, I liked Mega Evolutions. Where they lost me was when they did that like 4 times in a row. They're like, oh, we can't keep supporting Mega Evolutions. We have to do these special moves. We can't keep supporting that. Now we have to do Gigantamax. We can't keep
Gigamax,
supporting
yeah,
that. We have to do Terrestrial Eyes or whatever the last one is. That's what
yeah.
bothers me. I like Mega Evolutions in of themselves. I wish they just left it there though and kept that as mechanic instead of like whatever's been happening, trying to make each game a different shtick.
Yeah, I can't get down with it. Like the Mega Evolutions just doesn't make sense to me in the context of the world. And then like Z moves, I was like honestly kind of like, okay, this is cool because every Pokemon could use it.
Right.
Every Pokemon can use Z moves. And I was like, cool, cool. I can dig with this. It just sucks that like most of the other the rest of the Alola games was not good, but we got Rowlet out of it, so totally worth it.
Well, it was good.
Um, and then yeah, and then the got was it Gigantamaxine? Like,
Yeah, it was in Sword and Shield.
yeah, didn't really like. I like Sword and Shield a lot. Like Sword and Shield, I liked way more than I thought I was going to. Um, and but didn't really like the Gigantamaxine. I didn't like this whole like kind of a stadium vibe that they did with the gym battles. Like, um, it just I just think that like as Pokemon has gotten bigger and bigger over the years, and they try to make their games bigger and bigger and bigger, it kind of just like took away uh from the again like just the kind of like the simplicity of Pokemon. Where it's just like,
Sure.
hey, you're just a young kid from a small town, and you're going to these cities, you're going to get these gym battle the badges to win the to become champion, and it's just like it was just such a perfect formula that just like the more that it got, and I'm not saying that I was ever against like them trying something different. Like I was super excited about Arceus Legends. I'm like, this is what people have wanted. This is what I have wanted. But then I think that it fumbled in some big ways for me that I just like outside of the performance issues that just like didn't give me exactly what I wanted. That yeah, I loved Kanto just because like it's like kind of like the first thing, and then Johto like was just such a memorable region of all the different like kind of activities that you do that again just like kind of felt like natural. It didn't feel like it was like something that was like structured in a story like with a bunch of creatives behind it, like the bug catching contest, like so cool. And then like with Hoenn like introducing like diving underwater and going to these underwater, I was like, this is so cool. And and yeah, it was they just continue to like make these notable but like still like small feeling changes that made sense to expand, but then they just kind of like overdid it, and they just
Yeah.
continue to overdo it. And I get it, like they need to make keep it like interesting. They got to like, especially like in the competitive scenes and the trading cards, like I get it, Pokemon is the biggest IP in the world, like, but it just isn't really the same for me. Even the Hoenn remakes, I thought it was bad. I thought it was like the opposite of what Heart Gold and Soul Silver was. It just like didn't. Hoenn did not work in a 3D space the way that the original games did. So, but yeah. So like I think ultimately like if you're new to Pokemon for some reason, you can kind of just play whatever you want, and you're gonna feel the way that you're going to feel. Everyone kind of feels differently about Pokemon. Like I will always love Pokemon. I still need to play Scarvi, but like I will always like get the new Pokemon game. Like they they have earned my like loyalty in that sense. But but boy, like that series is just not the series I grew up with, you know.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I hate sounding like that guy, like that old man, but it's just
Yeah.
how I
Well, and
feel.
one thing that is difficult about that franchise is that outside of what are no longer available because of the 3DS eShop being gone, uh, there hasn't really been a great job of making older ones available. Like you
Hmm.
kind of just are always at the mercy of like what's the current gen or what's the most recent remake. There's not a lot of handy tools for easily playing like Heart Gold and Soul Silver or Black and White 2 or like whatever one you want to check out. For the most part, if you just are looking to get into Pokemon, play what's out is pretty much what it comes down to
Yeah,
right now.
yeah. I'm sad too because like I did not have the money to go crazy on the 3DS shop when it was like closing.
Oh yeah,
So I did not get to like really pick up any of that stuff. Like granted, I have like Crystal and on my I have Crystal, like my old Crystal cartridge from when I was a kid. I have my Ruby cartridge, I have my Blue cartridge. Um I have like the games that like really matter to me like physically, so it's not a huge deal. I have Platinum, I have Black and White 1 and 2. Like I recently like kind of went out the way to like buy everything, you know. Um the only thing I really need is Soul Silver, and which I have everything but the game. I have the box, I have the Poke Walker, I have
you have the
everything but the
Pokewalker, and
game.
you don't have. Oh geez,
I have the I was a dumb high school kid and I sold my game to someone because I was just
damn.
like, oh, dude, I played the shit out of that game. I put like hundreds of hours into that game, and I was like, okay, I'm not gonna play this game anymore or like, oh, I need money for a different game. Like high school, like you had to
No,
do it.
we've all.
And
I feel like everyone has a story of I sold or traded in a game that I deeply regret
yep,
as time has
yep,
gone on.
mm-hmm. And so, I need to get a cartridge for that. I want to get a copy of Emerald at some point, but I have Ruby, so not a huge deal. But yeah, Pokemon is you you know, unsurprisingly, Pokemon is very expensive to get those games. So,
Yep,
alrighty. Well, I think we've gone over all the main stuff. I
for
think that was a
sure.
lengthy
Yeah.
topic
No, I think we
for this
got through all the
episode.
big ones. I mean, look, if you really want to get the minutia, there's lots of series that haven't had a new entry since like the PS3 that we could talk about, or we didn't touch on like
Breath
Star
of
Ocean.
Fire
But as far
or
as like
Star.
the
Dude, that was
big,
the other one I was thinking. Yeah.
yeah. But as far as like all the big ones, especially ones with like double digits number of games, we got it.
Yeah, we got it. We got it. Oh well. Actually, there's one way we forgot. The Atelier series,
Oh, which is a
which
huge blank spot for me. I know
which
nothing.
we're both pretty blank spot on. But if you are someone that's like, oh, I want to play the Atelier games, um, you know, I would say, uh, you could really start. Um, so Atelier is basically split up in like different kind of not
Or
arcs per
yeah,
se, but like groupings of
trilogies.
games.
Yeah,
Yeah. Mainly trilogies. Sophie 2 recently released, and that made it a quadrology or tetralogy, but normally trilogies, and they're connected, same cast, that type of thing. Um, but I feel like Ryza was like the trilogy that started to kind of put Atelier more on the map. Um, And so I would probably say like you could start with Atelier Ryza, and then also Atelier Yumiya is coming out um this month, and that is the start of a new probably future trilogy of games. And I also think if I remember correctly, they're changing the gameplay. The gameplay is like they're because I'm pretty sure it used to be turn based, and now it's going to be it's like a it's more like it's not it's more real time. It's
sure.
so that's a change. So that might be the play as well. It's really kind of up to you. It's kind of like, hey, just start at one of these arcs and then you can just or like trilogies and then go from there. But the series has progressed a decent chunk, like evolved over time. The past since like the PS3, I think is when what we consider like the modern Atelier series. So that's something to potentially look into as well.
Now we got
But
it.
yeah, now we're done. But anyway, everybody, thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of Party Chat. We have some other goodies for you coming soon. And again, we have Campfire Catalog coming up at the end of the month, which we're excited about. And we're also like currently doing a poll for our patrons as to what the next Campfire Catalog game is. Me and Kevin selected 4 games, and those games are The Legend of Dragoon, Valkyrie Profile, Wild Arms, and Atelier Ryza. So, depending on if you if you become a patron before the end of the month, you're able to submit your vote and contribute to that. And yeah, so we're really appreciative for all the love and support, and we hope you all have a good week. And until next time, we'll catch you later.
Later.